So now let's just talk about hematopoiesis, that what is actually hematopoiesis. So hematopoiesis, as you will see the word hematopoiesis, it is again made up of two words. First one is hemato and the second word is poiesis. So we know that in Greek, hem or hemat means blood, while the word poiesis means formation. So combining these two words, we can get a definition of hematopoiesis, that hematopoiesis is the formation of blood, or in more clear way we can say that hematopoiesis is the formation of the cells of the blood in the body. Talking about hematopoiesis in more detailed way, we can say that hematopoiesis is the process in which the cells of the blood, the immature cells of the blood, proliferate and differentiate into all of the cellular components of the blood. So we know that in an average adult, the organ which is responsible for the formation of blood is the bone marrow. It is the primary site which helps in the process of formation of blood cells. Talking about hematopoiesis, hematopoiesis is a lifelong process which continues throughout our body. Hematopoiesis is a process which starts or initiates from the fetal stage and continues to begin till the end of the life. In the entire life of the person, the hematopoiesis is the process which does not stop ever. It continues throughout the life. However, there are some stem cells that are present from the birth of the body, that are given from the mother to the fetus itself. It can not be increased or not be decreased. The count of the stem cell will remain the same throughout the life of a person. So, talking about hematopoiesis, now let's just focus more on the hematopoiesis. You need to understand the definition in a very clear and understandable way. In however way you can understand and keep it in your mind that hematopoiesis is the formation of blood cells. Which kind of blood cells? The immature or the uncommitted stem cells begin to proliferate, mature and then differentiate into the mature cells or the cellular components of the blood. Alright, average human adult produces approximately 1 trillion blood cells every day. If we talk about an average human, it produces approximately 1 trillion blood cells every day. The three kind of blood cells, all the three kind of blood cells. Now, to study hematopoiesis, we need to understand few words. What are these? First one is the stem cell. That what is a stem cell? And the second one is hematopoietic stem cell. So, focusing on stem cells, what are stem cells? Stem cells are the multipotent, pluripotent cells of the body. Now, what are multipotent or pluripotent cells? These are also called as the father cells. Alright, it is the multipotent cells of the body, or we can also say that pluripotent cells of the body. Multi means many or various. Potent means ability. Same is with the pluripotent. Pluri means plural or many, and potent means ability. So, the cells which have the various ability or plural abilities to form every cells of the body are called as multipotent or pluripotent cell. So which are called the pluripotent or multipotent cells of the body? The stem cells are called as the multipotent or pluripotent cells of the body. Stem cells are also known as the father cells. These cells have the capability to form every kind of cell of the body, or you can say that all cells of the body are formed from these cells only. Stem cells are the ones which are responsible for the formation of all kind of cells in the human body. Now what happens? The stem cell differentiate into multipotent cell, or its you can say the sub cells, which are responsible for particularly only single kind of cells of the body. Now what happens for the formation of different kind of the cells? Stem cells differentiate into their subtypes. Like for the process of hematopoiesis or the formation of blood, stem cell will differentiate into hematopoietic stem cell. Stem cell will produce all kind of cell, while the particular kind of sub-cell or sub-stem cell will produce only its kind. Like hematopoietic stem cell will only produce the blood cells. The osteopoietic stem cell will produce the osteocytes only, which are the bone cells. So these are the different kind of subcells which the stem cell produces. Alright, so I think this is clear that what are stem cells and what are the hematopoietic cells. Hematopoietic stem cells are multipotent cells which have the capacity for self-renewal. All the stem cells have the capacity of self-renewal, as well as they have the capability to differentiate and give rise to different types of the particular cells for which they are made. So in case of hematopoietic stem cell have the property of self-renewal, and the second property is the differentiation into blood cells. Now talking about the sites or location on which the hematopoiesis happens or occurs at the different stages of life. In this tabular form, you can see it is differentiated into two columns. First column is dedicated to the age or the stage of the human life, whereas the second column is dedicated to the site or location at which the hematopoiesis occurs. So in this table, you will understand that at which stage of life, at which site the blood cells are formed. Okay, so beginning with the first one, the embryo stage, when the fetus is formed, also known as the fetal stage. At the embryo stage, there are no organs, or the bone marrow is not defined. At this stage, the hematopoiesis happens in the yolk sac and then in the liver. When all the organs are developed, then it happens in the liver also. But initially it begins or happens in the yolk sac. Many MCQs have also been derived from this point, that at the fetal stage the hematopoiesis occurs in, the answer is yolk sac. Then from 3rd to 7th month, the hematopoiesis occurs in the spleen. The blood cells are formed in the spleen. Then at 7th month, the hematopoiesis or the blood cells are formed in the marrow cavity, especially the cells erythrocytes. Not only erythrocytes, all cells are formed, but especially erythrocytes. Due to the higher amount of RBCs needed by the body, the need of the fetus increases, thus the marrow cavity especially produces erythrocytes. At birth, the hematopoiesis mostly occurs in the bone marrow, but also in the spleen and liver when it is needed. At the time of need, it mostly produces in the bone marrow only. But when there is an excessive need for the blood cells, then spleen and liver will also produce the blood cells. Then from the birth to maturity, as we have discussed this in earlier video also, that the bone marrow converts from the red bone marrow to the yellow bone marrow as the fetus or the infant changes into an adult person. So thus, due to this point or this thing, the number of active sites in the bone marrow decreases, but still have the ability to produce blood cells. Alright, due to the conversion of bone marrow from red bone marrow to yellow bone marrow, from the fetal stage to the adult stage or the adolescence, the number of active sites in the bone marrow also decreases. But when needed, when there is a need, there is the other body parts can also they also have the ability, they can also produce the blood cells. Now talking about the adult stage, when a person converts totally into an adult, it happens in the bone marrow, the red bone marrow, or we can say the red bone marrow is confined to only few regions, that is skull, ribs, vertebral column, pelvis, proximal ends of femur, sternum. So these are the organs or the bone marrow which produces the blood cells in an adult person. In an adult person, the bone marrow or the red bone marrow is confined only to few regions, that is skull, ribs, sternum, vertebral column, pelvis, proximal ends of femurs, ribs also. So at the time when the person achieves the adultness, the bone marrow is confined, the red bone marrow is confined to these regions only, and at these locations only the red bone marrow will produce the blood cells. So we can say the capability of other organs is decreased. Moving on. Now let's just discuss that how the hematopoietic stem cell give rise to the different kind of or the different components of the blood cells. This is that different blood cells are formed in which process. So here you can see, I would like to add this point to this. Right, the stem cell which are there in your body, which you get from your mother to produce different kind of stem cell and different kind of cells in the body, the stem cell give rise to their sub-stem cells, or we can say in case of hematopoiesis, as we are reading hematopoiesis, we will only focus on the hematopoietic stem cell. So stem cell give rise to different kind of sub-stem cell. In case of hematopoiesis, it is hematopoietic stem cell. Stem cell give rise to hematopoietic stem cell. The hematopoietic stem cell then differentiate into different cell line. Two kind of cell line. First one is the lymphoid progenitor cell line and the second one is the myeloid progenitor cell line. The lymphoid progenitor cell line then gives rise to immature lymphocytes like pro-lymphocytes. It will produce pro-lymphocyte. The pro-lymphocytes will then produce the lymphocytes, which then differentiate into different kind of lymphocytes. These kind of B cell, T cell and the natural killer cells. Alright. Stem cell is there. Stem cell is the father cell. It has the capability to produce all kind of cells of the body. The stem cell will give rise to or will differentiate into hematopoietic stem cell. The hematopoietic stem cell in process or in continuation will differentiate into two kind of cell line, lymphoid progenitor cell line and the myeloid progenitor cell line. The lymphoid progenitor cell will then differentiate or mature into or give rise to prolymphocytes, which are immature lymphocytes. The immature lymphocytes will then mature and develop and convert into lymphocytes. There are two kind of lymphocytes, B cells and T cells. From lymphocyte, B cell and T cell are formed, and a different kind of cell also known as natural killer cell will also be arised from the lymphocytes. Alright, now talking about the myeloid progenitor. From the lymphoid progenitor, only lymphocytes are formed. Rest of the blood cells are formed from the myeloid progenitor cell line. The myeloid progenitor cell line will again differentiate into different kind of immature cell, which will then mature and develop into the blood cell. The myeloid progenitor will give rise to the erythroid progenitor, which with the help of different kind of hormones and other things will be forming immature RBCs or immature erythrocytes. The immature RBCs will go through the different stage of development and then will convert into the reticulocyte, which is also an immature RBC. The reticulocyte in result will give rise to erythrocytes, which are also called as the RBCs. So, this is the process. The myeloid progenitor will differentiate into different kind of progenitor cell line. These progenitor cell line will develop the immature cells. These immature cells through a different stage will develop and mature into the mature cells of the blood. So, for the RBCs, the myeloid progenitor differentiate into erythroid progenitor. For the thrombocytes, it will differentiate into megakaryocyte or the thromboid progenitor. Which will differentiate into immature megakaryocytes, and megakaryocytes in turn will lead to thrombocytes, or also known as platelets. Then myeloid progenitor will differentiate into the myeloblasts. These myeloblasts will give rise to different kind of WBCs: basophil, eosinophil, neutrophil and monocyte. The monocyte in turn, after circulating for few days in the bloodstream, will convert into the macrophages, which will help with the reticular endothelial cell, which will help in the removal of dead parasites, dead and decaying part which is present in the bloodstream itself. It will remove all the toxic or pathogenic things which are circulating in the bloodstream. So, this is how the process of all blood cells, formation of all blood cells takes place inside our body. There is a multipotential hematopoietic stem cell devoted for the formation of blood cells. What it does, it differentiates into two kind of blood cell lines, lymphoid progenitor cell line and the myeloid progenitor cell line, which in turn will produce different kind of progenitors for different kind of cells. These different kind of progenitor cells will give rise to immature cells, which through the stage of development will divide into more mature stage and will eventually lead to the formation of blood cells of the body. So I hope this video will help you in understanding hematopoiesis in very clear and understandable way, and also you will be able to understand or find the differences between the serum and plasma. That's all for today. Thank you for listening and devoting your time.